Hello there, this is Kate Mackenzie. Welcome to my podcast and welcome to today's podcast, which is really a beautiful podcast about how to create the space when you're in a relationship. And of course, we're going to talk about couples, but it could be couples, thruples, it could be with children or family members. How do you honour that third space, which is between me and you? That space that is potentially a really creative space, but could be a difficult space. How do we work that? How do we listen to each other? How do we embody ourselves? How do we differentiate? How do we become aware of the systems or the ranking or the way I might embody mother or child in a relationship? And how do we honour all those parts, the turtling, the octopusing, and yet be more flexible and yet move through and yet be open to opportunity? And how do we recognise when that might not be possible? Or when a slight change, like meeting someone's energy where they're at or using a certain communication tool, might open the door. Well, welcome to the world of Matt and Sarah Davies, and they are experts in this area, and they're a couple who've written the most amazing book about the space between us, and I hope you really enjoy this podcast. So welcome, Matt and Sarah. Thank you so much for being with me today and talking about your beautiful book.
Thank you.
Yes. Wow. Which really is a gift.
Thank you, Kate.
Because you really give so much of yourselves generously, but you also give so much information, and you also very delicately, generously speak about how to create the space, how to navigate dynamics and understand them, and how to go on each individual journey with feelings, as well as speak to and from the space with many tools and tips, plus your own journey. So I wondered, what would the space like to maybe, or what do you imagine the space you're bringing in might like to bring some of today? And I know it's so layered, but what might come to each of you about what you both might think might be nice to bring today around this discussion?
Okay. Well, it makes me think about emotions that we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Vulnerability, which I guess is part of emotions. Where did your mind go?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I'm a bit confused because I'm thinking, I don't quite know how to approach that actually, because this is a space as well, isn't it? The three of us.
So we could all have thoughts, even all of us might have digital metaphors.
Yeah.
And how do they combine? Really nicely put. So there's all, it's absolutely right. This is another space. Exactly.
Yeah. Another space. And so we're here talking about the book, which is also a kind of a product of our relationship, which is a kind of a space. It's a kind of, we've produced it into from a space between us,
and then we enlarge the space, holding workshops for other people and then sessions for other people. We kind of brought other people into that space, and went out into their spaces.
That's true.
Yeah.
Pulsation, the kind of pulsation of the two of you, your spaces, your intimate people connections, your community workshop, people you serve, and then the book is going out.
Even
further, maybe.
And that's an interesting, a kind of a scary thing as well, because now the book has been born, so it's been produced from the relationship, as I like to see it. It was kind of written by a relationship from the relational space, but now it has its own existence and it's out there. And there are some vulnerabilities around that, of course, because we've got some of our story in there. So that's, yes, it's like how will it be received? How will it be used and worked with? And so that's something to.
And I think in a way we didn't predict perhaps that vulnerability, even though the book is a lot about vulnerability. And we were here in my office space writing it through a lot of lockdown, and then it's really exciting to have that project, and since it's out, there's kind of like that tenderness that perhaps we didn't imagine or prepare for quite.
And also it's new, it's kind of new for us to be talking about it as well, because when we were engaged in it and producing it, it was a very different kind of space, and now it's more of an objective space. It's still emotional because we have different feelings about it as well, actually, and so that can be.
What kind of feelings? I was curious about the actual process of lockdown working together, and I know you had been running workshops for couples together. But I was curious because I've heard other couples who wrote books together, and they said, wow, it was a great idea. Then they were writing the book, and their cycles came up writing the book because of the differences and the commonalities and their different ways of being came up with the writing. And then it was almost like they had to go on a deeper journey with their couple. And I wondered about, how was that for you, even writing that book?
Well, I mean, reflecting on it, I mean, we can come to the writing of it, but I think for me, just now I'm thinking about how we're reflecting on it, and that can be different. We've had some differences in that, haven't we? Like we've thought, we should have said more here or more there, and that's what I'm thinking of areas where that wasn't good, or that was not, but that could have been better, and so that kind of brings up our differences, how we're reflecting on it and whether we think it's good or not, or how happy we are with it.
But actually writing the book, I mean, we did have we had a lot of fun,
was
really.
Quite fun at many times.
And I think exactly that edge that you're talking to, we navigated it with some creativity around playfulness and humour. So we used a lot of that in order to manage those times when we thought the other one wasn't writing well enough, or coming up with enough ideas, or wasn't, we were quite good at structure, and when one of us wasn't holding to the structure, things like that. And so we got quite playful with it, and even imagined that we had other casts of writers and people in the office and all sorts. So we actually had a lot of fun. So.
Yeah, I mean, we navigated that through kind of taking alter egos and actually, kind of playing out those aspects, and we could actually criticize each other very, very, very well through these other characters. But we had some bitterness. I mean, there was some sort of opposition at times, and that was. But not a lot. I mean, we did get quite polarized, and we talk about polarities in the book. So, and how you transcend them. And at times we did fall into, a real split over, but not so much. I mean, it wasn't too bad, was it, generally? Yeah. But again, having these characters helped us to play through and be more objective about what character were we actually being in that moment, how we were adopting a different character. At that moment, or a different aspect of ourselves.
And I guess we've always had quite a playful relationship. So, we do use humour sometimes to just cope with difficult situations, and it's just fun as well. So, we do get serious as well. But
did the characters have names and ways about?
Yes, they did. Yeah, they had names. Yeah, that's right.
So brilliant. And
and
did you write a chapter each, or did you actually write together, go and do research and then put it together?
Yeah, we did. We wrote a little bit about. We would have a theme for the day. So we had a big wall, which is in front of us, and we were planning the chapters and the themes on the wall, and then we would each take a a topic and write it up, and then Sarah would read mine and redline all the way through it. and then we would proceed like that, and then I would, obviously you have to take out the parts or rewrite the parts that she had commented on, but we would comment on each other's. But that was my bugbear, that Sarah was redlining all my. But no, it was fine. It worked actually really well, and actually. And
we're not writers. We've come to this from. Matt's a psychotherapist. I'm a movement coach. So we've come to this from working with people and an interest in relationships. So we were kind of trying to almost make up, like, how do you write a book? How do people do this? How do you structure chapters and structure ideas? So that was quite just a creative process of trying something out and putting it all on the wall and changing it all around again.
But it came out, I think why it wasn't as difficult as we imagined it might have been, because it came out of what we had already been working with in our own relationship. So through all the therapy we've had together, all the couples therapy, we had learned certain things that we found really useful, and we had actually implemented them throughout our journey. So it was just a matter of saying, yes, so that was useful, that was useful. So we started to sort of refine what we wanted to bring in and speak about it and unfold it, unpack it.
Makes sense, because the book reads in this wonderful synergy of both your works, with the body and the understanding of the dynamics in relationships with polarity and gridlock and parent dynamics. And I love all the ways you talked about complementary system, all the different ways, feelings. But also every moment, it seemed to me that you brought the body in, tone, pace. You can make a bid, you can make an appreciation, how you're doing it. And so it felt like it just felt like you two are meant to be together to do this and to do this book and really navigate the points which are essential. But it just felt like that was totally woven.
Thanks. Yes, it was, and that's what we like when we do our workshops together. It worked so well because we can have the talking sort of more cognitive aspect, and then we can have the more effective emotional aspect through Sarah's movement work.
And there is actually a very large overlay between our works. So the more we kind of differentiate, the more we see how much overlap there is. So it does work very well together.
That's right. So because because I work with the body as well anyway, sort of some sort of body-centered stuff, exactly. And emotions, of course, are all body-centered. How we feel the action tendency, and we want to where we feel it in the body, its action, or physically located. So but where were we going with that? What was that about the body and the thinking and the body. That's right. And I think what is also important to understand, that we didn't really talk so much about in the book, but I think that the emotion is communication as well. That is also that the space is many things, as you'll know from the book, but it's also this emotional space, like a sort of a balancing chamber. That's how it can be.
That's so lovely. Do you
know what I mean? Yeah.
What kind of balancing chamber is that balancing chamber?
Yeah.
Lovely.
Well, I think in the book we talk about a space that we can both appropriate, or that if we can both feel safe enough to venture into this space, and I think in terms of a balancing chamber, I like to see it like where emotion can go into it and can come out of it, and I often think that when we're polarized in emotions, it's usually because I'm trying to control Sarah's emotion. Do you know? So if so that can cause the conflict, and so I'm trying to down-regulate Sarah's emotion, for instance. But what I found is that when I can meet her in your emotion, I don't know whether Is this making sense?
I'm enjoying it. Carry on.
When I meet you in your emotional intensity, you're more likely to feel you can then self-regulate down yourself.
I'm thinking down regulate or up.
Yeah, or maybe, but that's the balance.
To meet,
because otherwise I'm sucking it all out. And I think it's a useful metaphor. I worked with a couple and they had a caravan and they were going on holiday. And they, by the way, are fictionalized elements of this. So it's not a real couple or a real scenario, but it's very similar. They had a puncture in the caravan and they thought, oh my God, what are we going to do? And they're in the middle of nowhere. And she's getting very, 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 very worried and anxious. My God, what are we going to do? And he's going, oh, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. And through the therapy, it turns out that he was actually just as anxious as she was. And as soon as he could start to really own his own anxiety and bring that in, she could then, okay, right, now I can relax because I can understand that you were feeling the anxiety as well. It wasn't just me and I wasn't just some neurotic kind of creature. And that's what I mean by a balancing chamber, that if one person's trying to, hold on to a calming, down-regulating position artificially and not try and that, and I hear that all the time in my work, that one of them, trying to keep plain sailing, keep the waters calm, and it's counterproductive when you can go in there and feel the emotion and be in the emotional space. Then it as EFT says, it's self-organizational. It works itself out. It goes, and that's what we work with in the body, or you work with in the body, isn't it? That you can't leave a place until you've arrived there, and that's when you arrive at an emotion and feel it and embody it.
And it sounds so simple, but mostly we're so protected and defended against feeling anything because we just want to be okay. So we push all of that away and kind of numb ourselves with all the daily scrolling and busyness and caffeine and all the things that we do to keep on an even keel. And so it's not that easy, and culturally we support that so that we're all a little bit
disembodied
or distanced from really connecting with that feeling, to try and manage and get through, which often is useful and can be helpful. I don't know about this situation with the puncture, but maybe that needed to happen, so that all maybe somehow get through the situation.
That's another piece of very generous sharing of all different ways and dimensions of relating, plus the space and desire, and your generous sharing around pregnancy and birth and all that generosity. Is that so much happens in a relationship, and there can be that couple shame, which is like, God, we're not getting this, we're the only ones, and my partner seems a little angry or shut down, and I'm lost and I'm trying to fix this, which I know you're giving ideas about not fixing or looking at it differently, but it's what's so nice is you taking us into the mechanics, a bit like plumbing, and also even with the octopus turtle, very kind, very sweet, about these different ways of managing space, and they can there's gifts in all these different, like you said, complementary in the systems. Sometimes it's useful that someone becomes parental for a moment, but it's not useful if it's permanent.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. And that's the complementarity, isn't it? Of yes, it's good to be able to occupy different positions, and to one person leads, the other follows. That's a natural kind of, and you switch around that.
But having that flexibility, each person needs to be able to self-soothe and really hold themselves and feel secure enough to leave their position, to be the one who's so that we don't get fixed in our role of being the anxious one, or the one with the least desire, or the one who takes certain roles in the house, or whatever it is.
And that can be where emotion can, I mean, I'm sure many of us are all aware of that conflict avoidance tendency. That's certainly mine, is to sort of, I'm not going to, I can't say that because Sarah will be furious,
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm already feeling it.
Exactly. So I think so that's also about just what's that about not being scared of emotion, I suppose, just trying to understand it,
keeping an even keel, making a status quo, the brushes all over, it'll all pass. And sometimes that's really useful because it does, and sometimes, you just need to get through the day. And at other times, then things might build up or rumble on, or we end up dissatisfied or sexless or, feeling disempowered or retreating, grumbling at each other. And it's just, dissatisfaction. And then actually to be able to be vulnerable enough just to rock the boat and say, actually, this is what's going on for me. And
you're very good at that.
To potentially risk.
Sarah's very good at that, but I'm not. And I think the interesting thing is we can.
You're not that bad.
I don't know. I think I think what we found is that we reverse roles in octopus turtles, don't we? We can, and I think that's really interesting because it's not a fixed thing. Yeah. So sometimes I think generally speaking, I'm often more the octopus with the higher anxiety, reaching out for connection. But when I'm hurt, I go way into turtle and start to, sulk and, seclude myself.
Yeah.
Exclude, seclude,
Yes. And then I get some room
and you
to
reach out to me and you go, oh, Matty.
It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? That underneath the octopus would be a turtle and underneath the turtle would be...
Yes, that's true.
And that we would all layer. It would be layer and layer and layer, Like you said, when there's... you named this beautifully. If an octopus was with another octopus, they'd turn into a turtle. So, we discover our different parts dependent on the situation. So, and it's what's so lovely, and obviously you're vulnerable and open and honest, but what's so lovely is that you've both chosen to embody and the snarch 4 pillars of meaningful endurance and calm heart, quiet mind, and all the different he talks about to get out of gridlock. But what if somebody is with somebody, it doesn't seem like they want to do their personal work? Or do you think it's always possible, or is there a place where people have to recognize maybe it's not, or maybe that's part of the authenticity? Is that what you want? Right.
That's a very difficult one, isn't it? Because I think to a certain extent, it is true that the pushing for change just doesn't work. It creates resistance, and I think we've mentioned that in the book, the paradoxical theory of change is that as soon as you accept things as they are, then change happens.
Like a cat. If you let the cat know you're there, and it can come to you in a way, whereas okay. Yourself on a cat, and depends on the cat, but
that's right. So, and I think that every like in the book, you give the example of Sarah had this book. Actually, it was the book by Schnarch, Passionate Marriage.
What I wanted to say. That's amazing story. That
I know, isn't it? So that just shows, doesn't it, that everything has its time and place.
So the story is that I read that book, Passionate Marriage, at the beginning of our relationship, and really urged Matt to read it. So, this is such an exciting book. This is great. We should read this. People I know are recommending it, and then it sat, I think, on your bedside table, pretty close to for 10 years.
For about 10 years. And then I woke up to it and really loved it. And but I was already training then. I think in the book it sounds like that's when I started to train.
It did sound like that. So
that wasn't actually quite accurate. I was already training, and I was already working in with couple, in the couple area, and that's why I really loved it and really embraced it. And maybe that's why I then picked it up. But it was frustrating for you because you wanted me to read it, and I just didn't, and I didn't pick up on the urgency.
So everything's got its time. But back to the question about gridlock, and I think it's a really difficult question. At what point is it a deal breaker? At what point is do we tolerate things not being good enough? And at what point do we say, to risk everything, to throw down the gauntlet, put the cards on the table, or whatever it is, and it's a tricky one,
and it is a massive conundrum, because it never works if you're staying in a relationship on a conditional basis. That just does not work, does it? So you can't say, I'm only going to stay if eventually you change, because that's not conducive to change. That just creates fear. So
it's really well put.
So it's so hard for that. How do you play it? Because in a way, the relationship itself needs complete trust, and that's the space, isn't it? That we trust this, and it needs complete commitment. And when you've got that, that's when you get the best relationship.
That's right, and it's that kind of who does which first. Although I don't know if you've ever seen this yourselves, but I've seen it when suddenly the couple are ready to split.
I don't think it's
I agree.
And even if they go even if they move out, suddenly there's a shift in the honesty and the differentiation, and sometimes another space sometimes creates. They may or may not get back together, but something changes in the space. Do you ever?
I do. I've got a couple like that at the moment, and I was using the metaphor of looking over the edge of the cliff. You have to look over the edge to see what's there, and to sort of ground yourself in that possibility that they could split and live a different existence. And then that's kind of freeing in some ways to countenance other options, because you can get stuck in a cognitive kind of frame about what the relationship has to be. And it needs to be broken open, and then it's either recreated anew or it's in a different form, as you say.
And that breaking open is a true differentiation, to be able to say, right, I'm here as an independent adult in my own right, and there you are in your own right as an independent, to be able to really own your own spaces, and then you can see each other anew, afresh, and the excitement can build. So. And how to get that in the relationship, so it doesn't have to get to that extreme. So I guess that's the golden question for every couple, and to that kind of balance of being able to merge and be in that love bubble of we together, and be able to stand independently and stand in your own values and your own body and or your own desires, and to be able to tend to them. And tend to each other as well. So
it reminds me of you writing the book, and then the book going out there in a way, because there's a journey with the relationship, like you said, maybe each of you having your own experiences about it going out there, but also this beautiful room that you're in where you wrote, and you've been creating these. I know a couple, and she regularly travels to hotels for work, and that gave them space. So when she came back, they missed each other, and there was these. So the thing about it is, obviously, there are certain points where people split, and they don't necessarily get to these spaces because they think it's impossible. But if they could take some of the tools that you're talking about, maybe there's this emergence of differentiation where actually part of that is they take space and then come back together, like you're saying. And the illusion that myth of merging is a good thing all the time, obviously nice sometimes, that with couples that navigate, even couples who never do therapy, but they somehow change, like you said, to start growing things.
And it's hugely scary to sometimes acknowledge that actually I'm on my own, here, and that's scary, because I don't know, I don't want to be on my own, but I am on my own. So it's like facing, and that's the courage to be different. And Eric Fromm, in the Courage to Heal or Courage to Be, he talks about relationships take courage. They take courage to expose yourself, to be vulnerable, and to just be all in and not know where the relationship's going to go. That's another scary thing. When you start on a relationship journey, you don't know actually where it's going to go. There's going to be hurt on at some point, and but it takes courage to commit, and also then to, as you were saying, to be different and to differentiate, as you were saying.
And it makes you think of the courage to tend to the lost parts of myself. So we speak about that, like often people having affairs, or we're looking for that part of me that I've had to split off from this lovely person I'm with, because it might shock them, or it might be risky for them, or they might not like that kind of thing. So I go and do it elsewhere. There's this lost part of me. So I'm reviving my youth, or my freedom, or excitement, or desires, or whatever it is. But then the courage to bring that and potentially shock you, or excite you, or surprise
you, or be rejected.
Be rejected, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's right.
So the courage to hold on to myself enough to tolerate whatever that unpredictable process would be,
and to value yourself enough to know that you want to bring everything of you into the relationship, and not to have part of it out of the relationship.
It's so beautiful, because it's like that golden door of fear, isn't it? The dragon that no one wants to go into the cave with, and yet the gold. Gold, if people do. And I'm just curious, how do you think of that for the courage? How can, I know, one, themselves, I love the embodiment practices and the pleasure practices that you talk about, and all the practices, but so there's many ways of getting the nervous system a little bit more regulated, but it's still really courageous to be vulnerable with your primary partner or partners or whatever. It's still really, like, a lot of people will still feel that's one step too far. How do you talk about that?
Well, I think to see what would happen if I didn't do this is that eventually I die, or something dies between us.
Good point.
So at what point do I balance this out? Is this risk worth it or not? And how much life do I want?
That's a good point. So you look at what you're potentially losing. I think there's also something about which needs to be there in a relationship, and I guess that's about the space as well, is some kind of trust, and some kind of mutual respect that you feel will never be crossed, that line won't be crossed. I think something like that, so that you feel that you can be courageous and be vulnerable and speak your truth without.
And what if that's been crossed?
What if it's been crossed? Yeah, that's right. And that's painful. And I guess that's the breach of a boundary, whether it's an affair or an abuse of some kind, like violence or something. That's very hard to heal, isn't it?
Yes,
I guess
because
that's when you feel, this is now beyond what I expected or deserve, or something. Yeah, that's hard. So then it becomes a slightly different. Then the healing is a lot longer and a lot, if it's possible. That's a lot longer, isn't it? I think.
And that brings me to wonder, because reading it, I was in awe of the two of you, and I wonder whether that's the messages you get back from people, because there was this wonderful embodied multidimensional layering of understanding at every moment, where you go, oh God, that sounds impossible. You'd go, and both and the wonderful and the space kept coming in. So And it was like, oh, and that's possible, and that's, there was a gentle all the way through. Anything can interrupt sex, and these are the ways that fight it. And anyone can get parent-child, and these are the thoughts. But what do you do with people who might put you on pedestals, which again is really tough for people, I think, when people have written a book and then you are put on this, oh, you've got it all sorted, which, on one level you've got loads sorted, but on another level you're human beings. How do
Well, we did bring it in, actually. I mean, we were working with a couple and we brought it into the room, I think, at what I did it.
About argument, I remember.
About arguments. I think that was a good, I think, because then because of, maybe something
it makes you think. We were at this, we live on a street that's a bumpy street, and we had a street meeting about parking. And in the middle of the meet, and actually in that meeting, I think 4 people had been reading our book, and then
right.
And we were having some kind of spat in this, a small one, but someone said, "You two, you've written a book," as if we should be like speaking like one the whole time, and having the same ideas about things.
Yeah.
So I think we're managing that fairly well. Pretty ordinary couple. We have our ups and downs like anyone, and in fact, it kind of makes it more embarrassing having our ups and downs in a way, because we expect a little bit more of ourselves and of each other.
That's true.
In a way, we've raised our own stakes.
Raised our own stakes. But I think it's a complex question, because I think that so much goes on with this space as the third body, or we call it. So if you're in a room with another couple or a group of couples, how many third bodies are there? And
so many.
Exactly. And what's the transference and counter-transference, between them, or between the bodies themselves and the spaces and the thoughts and the idealization that's going on. It's complex. And that's why I think it's sometimes good to acknowledge, like, we turn to each other sometimes and we say, God, well, how are you feeling, or what's happening here, just to sort of make a connection and to acknowledge that we might feel stuck, or we don't know what's going on, or something.
And actually that makes me think of the lovely things you're saying about the book, and I think we can do that with each other. One of us can hold a viewpoint, and then the other's like, oh, well, what if, and we one of the exercises we offer is about switching sides, which we do quite a lot when we're really stuck and polarized and having a rant about something. We're quite good at saying, oh, and what if we paused here and saw it from another viewpoint. And we have done that for many years, so I guess we're kind of sharing that sort of willingness to be flexible around these things.
And that's why it's important that if we can do it in the room at times, or talk about something in the room with another couple, they can understand that this is normal. There is always the danger is the polarity to fall into a polarity, and then you have to sort of negotiate the polarity, work with it.
That's just gorgeous. Reminds me of Paddington Bear. That you take the journey, but you don't have to get it right. Which through your book, actually, you don't have to get it right. You can just
that's nice.
So that's really nice that you model that in the street meeting and with the couple, and because of the old way sometimes things being about the surface rather than the internal, and you're modeling a huge amount about this internal way of living, including the external, but this checking in with the internal, and that's quite new. I've talked to people and they go, how come we didn't know about all the trauma stuff? And I said, well, it's actually quite new for this to be so it's like 5 years. I mean, I know it's years and years, but it's quite new for it to be so common parlance to talk about. people's reactivity or what's going on in their body and their nervous system and
Although I don't know, at the moment, one of my trainings I'm doing Gestalt psychotherapy. We're reading the Fritz Perls original book from 1951, Paul Goodman and Hefline, and that's exactly this area. And there's that question: why does this still feel new? And I think there's, because it's vulnerable, because it's intimate, because it's sometimes hard work, and I think it shouldn't feel so new. And it
but it's
is
much more in common parlance now, isn't it, to talk about our own personal traumas and everything, which before wasn't really so common to be able
and our nervous system and how active we are, or what's going on with that, or oh, I'm just come in, so I might not be in the right place. Just around. But you're right, Gestalt and movement therapy.
Yes, which all stemmed from that. It stemmed from their original work around looking at the breath, and even though they didn't have the neuroscience to back it up, then the origins of it is all there. To get self-support and how to regulate. That was definitely the
and I think that's what we wanted to do with the book, was to say that it's okay and it's normal to have struggles in relationships. Relationships are struggles. They're naturally struggles. And if you don't have, if you ditch one relationship for another, you'll just get another set of problems. It's not like you're going to be problem free. So it's like, we talk about the one or anyone, and so we choose one, but we make our partner the one. But and when things are difficult, we start to think, oh, well, anyone else is more attractive. So it's like, but it's like it's like struggles are normal, and we talk about this cycle of harmony, disruption, repair. We're constantly having to repair, and even on a micro levels, like I'm thinking about what I might say next to make things better, or to be constructive, and and then if I say something negative or criticized, then I should expect that there's going to be a dip and I'm going to have to repair again. So it's like a constant, I think even in normal conversation, we're constantly aware of how am I going to respond to my partner in this situation. And so in that article, we talk about 3 moans a day, because moaning and negativity is so destructive. But often we do want to moan to our partner because they're the closest and dearest to us, and so we think they'll hear us endlessly. But actually, it's pretty hard to hear a lot of moaning and negativity. So Sarah came up with 3 moans a day, and
that's very good. So you talked about, from Gottman, that piece around if you leave it too long for your partner's bids.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? That's true. That's right. Then something gets dropped. That's right. Then the space perhaps becomes deflated in some way or something, and that's right.
Or attention gets held there. Waiting for a response.
And I guess disappointment then comes in, doesn't it? Disappointment of
not feeling met. I guess that's what it's really about. Like, are you there for me, or is something else taking your attention? And sometimes it is. So sometimes we can't give attention. Sometimes we're in the middle of a piece of work, and then it's like, can you see that I'm doing this? So some sort of acknowledgement.
I want you to be responsive all the time.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And very regular. There will be a partner when one partner's improving and not as avoidant. The other partner will be like, well, okay, every day.
I know.
Quite. It's tricky, isn't it? Because it can go into binary thinking any moment. But what would you two say, about maintaining that space? I study something called clean language, and there's something about, they call it clean space, which is about where are we in the space in our body, where are we moving to? There's clean metaphors. What metaphors are we using? Like your beautiful cast of people and the turtles and octopuses, and they use a lot of imagery, but also the body. to name, how are we keeping the space clean? Obviously, like you said, there can be struggles or movements or busyness, but what would you suggest about staying with feelings, staying with, I loved the matching energy you talked about, you know, not going to change your partner, but be with where they're at. What other things? I know you've said lots of things, appreciations, 3 moans. I love that.
Yeah. Well, I think the processing, I mean, I think that, so verbal processing using the DTR, the daily temperature reading, we really stand by that, because the tendency is, and I can do this a lot, I tend to go into a head spin and I internally process everything in my own head, and at times nothing can get communicated, to Sarah.
Very good point.
Yeah, but she'll pick up in the energy, and that's why I think, emotion is also communication. It comes out through the body.
Yes.
Yeah, so
I think you're right. The daily temperature reading, Virginia Satir's 5 model technique is absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
And I think it is, somehow got lost or underrated. And we do it, we recommend it to people all the time. It's an amazing communication tool as a temperature reading. It's like, oh, you've only got 1 appreciation for me today, or today there's 10, or you can't complain at me today. What's going on there? Or you've got super many complaints. So
it's a good one, because that is a kind of I like your words for cleansing the space. It is about cleansing. It is about processing, and it's amazing what comes up. When you've got the space, to communicate, and you've just got the time. It's like the listening exercise. It's so powerful. You've got time to actually say what's going on for you, and then you can speak into the space, and it's having the space there open for you is powerful.
You prepare the space. So, for example, what I mean by that is I studied something called bridging with Hedy Schleifer. That's she was, and what we would do is we would sit for some time, hand in hand, eye gazing, and soften the face and look at each other's faces to get into the space before listening.
That's lovely.
And there's something about that, because the back of the eye touches the touch centers of the brain, and so if they're quite ready to listen, they can look quite aggressively, but if they're softer, the eyes receive, if this makes sense. So I wondered if there's something about, before you do the temperature, I love that, it's an amazing exercise. Do something about preparing to share or listen in that way, maybe because you're body people, maybe you already are doing that kind of thing, but
Well, we actually, sometimes we don't do we? We just do it, and if we're driving, we might do it, or
walking the dog,
or in bed. But we have.
But I just think we probably do prepare the space by one of us will initiate. Would you like to do a daily temperature reading? And then there's a sense of how, have we got these 20 minutes possibly, or however long it might take.
So it's kind of asking, setting up.
That permission, we're in a private space, usually
getting acceptance. But we have, we don't tend to do so much eye gazing as an exercise, but we have done that. Hands on heart is a lovely one, and so yes, it is important, and we don't always do it like that.
I'm also thinking the daily temperature reading is often the go-to for us when all else fails.
That's true, when we're really stretched. Actually.
Really stretched. So then we're probably like, well, look, we can't really even speak to each other, so let's just do a DTR. And then we're probably just side by side is enough at those times.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Rather than being side, that's very interesting, because there's another couple method, and she recommended that people chose an object that represents your couple, and each of you talk to the object.
Oh right, yeah.
Yes, and it would be the side by side, which is why the car or the walk or the less confrontate. So you might. That's lovely. How does that work when you do the side by side? Does that?
It works
really good.
It works very well. And walking, in the past, we've always walked and talked, and it's been a lovely way of actually getting to issues, and we call it, the scandals. We talk about our scandals, which is a Greek word for stumbling block. So it's like we go through our stumbling blocks so we don't get tripped up.
You're so naturally funny, aren't you? Both of you.
Really? Okay.
That's brilliant. So we headlines for this week. Scandals, brilliant.
Exactly. And that's
and walking is a lovely way to do something like your scandals, because you're on the move. You're leaving the place you were when you last said that thing, and now you're in a new place. You always have fresh perspective, and you're more likely to be breathing well and grounding well, and
exactly. And then there are times when you might stop and go, "What? You mean that? Really? Do you really think that?" So then you can start walking again, and it's great. Yeah,
that's marvelous. So this really includes all your pieces of embodiment and regulation and breath, letting go, and feeling at the same time, and being authentic. Like what? So there's a lot, isn't there?
Yeah.
And the way you're using this is a lot. Yeah. I think sometimes people give up on the temperature gauge, actually, sometimes, even though it's genius. And I think what you've done is actually you've added lots of creative pieces with the walking and the sideways and it's actually
that's right.
Yeah.
And also with the temperature reading, you can also deconstruct it. So sometimes we'll just say, "Oh, would you like a request for change? I've got something that I'd like to bring in," and that's fine as well. Or "I've got an appreciation for you," which is really delightful. So it's not.
Do you find that obviously you've got the walking and the side by side? Do you find, like Thich Nhat Hanh said, if couples could go every week to a cafe, say 10 appreciations, and then pop the problems on the table, they'd solve all the problems in a few weeks.
Right, yeah.
And so I wonder, do you find you go to different spaces? Have you got the walking and the dog, and why do you go to different spaces, or do you go to a cafe? Do you find that?
Oh God, I love that idea. I love that. The relationship has a geography. I think we were going to bring that into the book, but I don't think we did in the way. But I think that's an important aspect of relationships, that they are geographically based. And we have memories of places we've been and sacred spaces that may become sacred to us for whatever reason. But so I love that idea. And we have the Ashdown Forest for us, where we live near the Ashdown Forest, is I guess our place of going for out breath and walking, and it's a kind of a special place for us.
But also I'm thinking about the appreciations part of it, because I think in the daily temperature reading, having the appreciations as an official part kind of collects them together and highlights them in a way where through the day where you might say, "Oh, thanks for that," or that was nice, and it might be a little bit throwaway, but when you kind of gather them as well, maybe that creates in a way this sense of space, like a geography, like it is here in this structure, and it gives it a meaning rather than they're being spaced out through the day. That's so weak.
And what about, you named power dynamics and systems and structures and how both of you might move in and out, but there are so many, aren't they, in couples, race, class, culture, gender. There's just so many power dynamics, and that's quite a process too, isn't it? And within the two, and childcare and work, and so many, aren't there? And I suppose, what would you say about?
It makes me think one of the people we studied was Arnold Mindell, and he has a whole interesting way of looking at rank and how each of us are very attuned to our rank when we meet anyone. That will be going on in some kind of in the background. So I think equality is essential in a relationship, and there's so many ways that can happen. It sometimes is less evident than you might at first think. How people present is often very different to what goes in at home, who makes the decisions, who has the most mental stability as well as financial stability, and social network and all of that. So, but I think equality at the end of the day is really important. However complex that is.
I remember looking at some old videos that Sarah had taken years back when we just moved from London and we were here in Forest Row, and I realised how much I had missed a part of our son's upbringing, and because I'd been working in London and I was still doing my old job, which was urban design, and I think I might have started my training in therapy. And I think that was a kind of an eye-opener for me that we were still very much in a traditional gender role, positions, that Sarah was looking after Ryan, after our son, and I was in there working in London, and it was kind of, and I realised, but then once we'd moved here, then I really let that go a lot, and I was still working in that job, but I was working from home, and then I would, you may see this differently, but just notice the way you're looking at me. I would work at night. Sarah then started her training, and then I would look after our son. I went to the training place for a week, looked after him while she trained, and I would do my work at night, and that because I was a designer, so I was working. So that worked. And I just think I think we negotiated it. Okay.
I remember maybe why I was giving you that look as I was thinking about the biggest bugbear argument we had then was around the diary of who's doing the childcare essentially. Yeah. And that was a really big argument point.
But I think what's important is the values underneath it. I think if a couple can agree on the values, whether it's the childcare values or how they live or money values, that's the best, that's the ground, because we knew we had values around childcare. So our son had a Waldorf education, and it required a lot more parental input and a lot more, home, from Sarah. But you were willing to do that, and I supported that.
I was willing, and I was in grief. A lot of that journey for me was around grief. I just, that was what was in the front line. I'm not. That was my priority of managing myself in that place. So I think that you and I were in different places then, very much so.
Yeah, that's true. We were, and so I think that's a part that's been an ongoing kind of tensional thing. I think we've negotiated it quite well, but I think
I guess the funny thing is, over the years it all changes.
Changes quickly enough.
Now our son's grown up, and we've got more time and space, and everything changes as soon as you get used to something or wrangle it through. It's different.
So one last piece. Thank you so much for being so generous. I spoke to Esther Freud about her writing, and she said that when she wrote her first book, which was Hideous Kinky, before that she'd had all these ideas floating around, and they were kind of ephemeral. And when she wrote it, she had this sense of grounded existence. Oh my goodness, she knew who she was, she knew what she was doing, she knew about herself. And your book was so rich, and I just was curious, because it's also your story, your ideas, the techniques you use, plus all the dimensions that you've learned around connecting relationship and the body. I just wondered about that, what's landed in you, and probably continuing to, with having put it together and put it out there, and
I think our book is so much from our space between us, and I wonder if that's a difference between someone who wrote the book solo, because it was so much a collaboration. And then we had an amazing developmental editor, Ingrid Ingstrom, and she came in and helped to structure it. So it really felt like this kind of process that I think we'd probably both say wasn't so much our own work. It happened as a collaboration.
There's a crystallization of ideas. Yeah.
So that's
which is the third, and that's the third space, or the third body, or the space between us. It's the creative space as well, the imaginative space, where we could both occupy that and crystallize something. And I think,
I think it's definitely clarified our, now when we're working together, we have this shortcut, which I guess we had before, but even more so now, where we've really chewed over aspects of couple work together, so that we have much more of a clarity around, I can imagine what you're thinking now, and here's where we're going with this, and so I think that's definitely clearer in terms of our work together.
Because you work with couples together.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, Matt works with couples full time, and I also work with groups and embodiment work, but we do collaborate. So and
I think the space between us still really engages me in my thoughts, and I think that if we were to write another book, I'd like to explore that even more. Like, what is this space, and to really go more into it in terms of emotion and how it gets filled, or what are the emotions in, and exactly, you know what I mean, to just to
that's what I'd like from the two of you as well.
Oh good.
Because there was this real feeling of a really adult, mature couple, in the sense of both of you embodying, working, differentiating, growing, looking, and it was just so divine to read a couple who are both doing that, and I thought, I'd like more.
Oh, thank you, Kate.
And it's such a creative space that you're evoking, and you do it as if, let's just take a walk. It is like, let's just take a walk through this so nicely. Stuff that could be quite academic, could be quite dry. It's not. It's very done very gently, nicely. I've got the book and Audible, listened to both. Really great. Loved you both. Loved the fact that you were both on the Audible. That was also fantastic. So it lent that intimacy.
Thank you very much.
Well done. Can't wait for another book. More space, exactly. And I love that, more of the intimacy, more of the cute, all the characters and the metaphors. Just, it's a lot, isn't there, in your space?
Maybe we should write about our cast of characters.
I love that, I have to say. That was brilliant. Every couple, I don't know if you're doing workshops with that, but every couple could do with that, really.
It's so helpful.
We did have a lot of it got quite complicated sometimes, as you can imagine. Who are you today? Who am I?
Exactly. I've just got the sack. Right. That happened a few times.
Are you the one I fancy?
That's brilliant. That's so good.
We did have fun.
It was.
So well, thank you. I'm going to be recommending this, obviously, because it's brilliant, and I think very accessible.
Thank you.
Accessible, and I think it gives so many ways in, but also being written by a couple. I think that's really deep and important. So thank you very, very. Is it going around the world? I imagine it is as well.
Yes, it is. I was on a panel in India. Well, not in India, but it was from India, online, and the book was available in India, which is amazing. So because the publisher has certain rights abroad, but
it's being published in Russia.
And it's going to Russia too, which is exciting. So
it's amazing. It's extraordinary.
So you never know what might happen, do you? So
well, thank you for bringing us on.
Well done. Thanks so much. Well done. Look forward to more.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So that was Matt and Sarah Davies. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and I'm so looking forward to more and more of their offerings. Absolutely divine, creative and unique, I really feel, because there is something about the way they speak that does feel equal. It does feel honouring. It does feel like both of them, in all their differences and their oneness, or the ways they might, their harmony, their differences, can exist and can be honoured and can flourish and can instigate different things. It feels like there's a fascination for each other and a willingness to grow and a willingness to be themselves and embody all of that. So it was a real honour to be with them. I really recommend their book and all that they do. So hope you enjoyed this, and thanks very much.